Today we're going to talk about adding rational numbers, which is where we're going to be taking our skills with adding positive and negative numbers and applying them to fractions and decimals. So first we're going to work with a fraction. We still use the same rules. When we're adding with a fraction, we find the common denominator, we change the numerators, and then we keep the denominator and add or subtract the numerators. So our question says, find negative 8/3 plus 5/6. A good idea is to estimate to see to make sure that our answer is going to be reasonable at the end. So 8/3, 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. So 8/3 is somewhere in the middle of that. So we're going to estimate it as a -3, and 5/6 is close to 1. So if I have -3 plus 1, we could use our number line, or we could also use our rule that they will cancel out and we'll have two negatives left over. So now we're ready to find the common denominator. So I look at my two denominators and I see 3 and 6. 6 will be my common denominator because 3 will go into 6. Another thing that you can do to make it easier is always put your negative in the numerator. So I'm going to put my negative with the 8. It could be on top, on bottom, or out front, but we're going to put it with the 8. So I will do 3 times 2 to get to 6. So I'll do -8 times 2 to get -16. And then I have to figure out, what do I multiply 6 by to get 6? Well, it's multiplied by 1. So whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom. So 5 times 1 is 5. Now, don't skip this step because you will probably make mistakes. So our textbook suggests to write the sum of the numerators over the denominator. So actually write what it's going to look like without working it out yet. -16 plus 5 over 6. Then we're just going to add the -16 plus 5 part. You could use your number line, or you could think I have 16 negatives and 5 positives, so they will cancel each other out. I have more negatives, so that will be -11. So my final answer is -11 over 6. So if I look, I was trying to figure out, is my answer reasonable? So 11 over 6, 11 divided by 6 is close to 12 divided by 6, and 12 divided by 6 is 2. So -11 divided by -6 is close to 2. And you could turn it into a mixed number if you want to, but you do not have to. Now we're going to apply those skills to decimals. So I need to find -4.05 plus 7.62. So -4.05 is close to -4, and then 7.62 is close to 7. So I'm estimating to check if my answer is reasonable. -4 plus 7, they will cancel out. So my positives will win because there's more positives, and I will have 3. Remember that when you are working with decimals, you're going to line up the decimal place. But I look and I see I have a negative number and a positive number. So even though I'm adding, negatives and positives cancel out. So I will end up subtracting because they're going to cancel out. So I'm actually going to do 7.62 minus 4.05. I will know my final answer is going to be a positive because there's more positives than negatives. So when I subtract, I line up the decimal places. I cannot do 2 minus 5, so I borrow. 6 becomes a 5. So that becomes 12. 12 minus 5 is 7. 5 minus 0 is 5. 7 minus 4 is 3. And I bring down my decimal. So my answer is 3.57. And that will be a positive number because there are more positives. And if I look at was it reasonable? Yes, my answer is reasonable because 3 is close to 3.57. And next, we're going to look at this word problem. A table shows the annual profits. Remember, profit is making money in billions of dollars of a financial company from 2008 to 2012. Positive numbers represent gains and negative numbers represent losses. Which statement describes the profit over the 5-year period? So here's our 5-year period. We can estimate really quickly. So I have -1.7, that's going to be -2. Negative 4.75 will round to negative, let's make that negative 5 because it's going to be closer to negative 5 than 4. Plus 1.7 is close to 2. Plus 0.85 is close to 1. Plus 3.6 is close to 4. So if I add these together, negative 5 plus negative 2, that's going to be negative 7. And then negative 7 and 2 will cancel out, so that'll be negative 5. And then negative 5 and a positive 1 will be a negative 4. And negative 4 plus 4 and negative 4 plus 4 will be 0. So it looks like they're going to come close to breaking even based on this. But remember, that's just an estimate, so we'll have to look closer by proving it. When we're working with integers, we can add the negatives together and then add the positives together to make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to put my two negatives together because I know that they will add and not cancel out. So I have 1.7 and 4.75. I know my final answer will be negative because they're both negatives. Line up the decimals when you add, put a 0 as a placeholder. So 0 plus 5 is 5, 7 plus 7 is 14, 4 plus 1 plus 1 is 6. So we get negative 6.45 when we add together our negative numbers. Now we're going to add our positives. So I have 1.7, 0.85, and 3.6. Once again, I put zeros in. So I'm going to put zeros in for my placeholders. They're all positive, so the answer to this will be positive. So 0 plus 5 plus 0 is 5. 7 plus 8 plus 6. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You didn't notice that I was using my fingers, not a calculator. So we get 6.15. So there are negative 6.45 in losses, billion in losses, and 6.15 billion in gains. So it is pretty close to 0 because we have negative 6 and 6, but we need to figure out exactly. So now I'm ready to put my negative number and my positive number together. If I look closely, I see 6.45 has more negatives than 6.15. So our final answer will be negative. So they had a loss. And I need to subtract to cancel out my positives and negatives and to see how many are left over. So I put the larger number on top to subtract, and I line up the decimals. 5 minus 4 is 1, 4 minus 1 is 3. Bring down my decimal. 6 minus nothing is 0. And it was a negative, so I get negative 0. Sorry, and I just realized that I wrote something down wrong. That was 6.5, not 6.4. Let me fix that. So 6.45, 6.15. So 5 minus 5 was 0. 4 minus 1 is 3. And 6 minus nothing is 0. So we get negative 0.3. Now I know that's a loss because it's negative. So look at my answer choices. I can automatically cross out the gains. But now I notice my answer isn't there because it says a loss of 3 million or a loss of 300 million. So they tried to trick us because this is in billions. So let's just line up some decimal places to test it out. So the billions place would be, there's hundreds, there's thousands, millions, billions. So 0.3 billion, the 3 is going to be right here. And then if I put in zeros, because this one right here is 1 billion. So if it was 0.3 billion, the 3 is going to be in the 1 millionths place. So I can see that it's actually 3 million is the same thing as 0.3 billion. So the answer is D. They had a loss of 3 million. Now try the last two questions, the error analysis on your own, and check your answers with the Edpuzzle.